Hi, I'm Zack from Kid2Kid Tutorials, and right now we're going to be practicing imaginary numbers. So now let's start with our first problem. So basically, an imaginary number is I, so they label it I as an imaginary number. So I equals the square root of -1. And since it's not a real number, they call it imaginary numbers. So I is equal to the square root of -1. And then I squared is -1. If you multiply those together, I squared is equal to -1. So let's use this information to solve these problems. So let's start with A. A is I to the third. So the easiest thing to do, it helps me a lot, is to separate it or break it out. So I to the third is just I times I times I. And if you multiply those together, you get I to the third. So we know what I squared is, so I times I is I squared. And then times I. And then I squared is -1. And so equals -1 times I. -1 times I is -I. So the solution to this problem is -I. Now let's go to B, I to the fourth. So we can I to the fourth, we can simplify that to I times I times I times I. And then we can make I times I is I squared, and then times another I squared, I times I. So I squared times I squared is I to the fourth, but we don't know what I to the fourth is, so we'll just use this. So I squared is -1, so -1 times -1. And -1 times -1 is 1. So I to the fourth is equal to 1. So now we go on to C. This may look hard, but it isn't when you simplify it out. So I to the 100th is equal to, inside parentheses you put I fourth. And then you can put 25, the power of 25, right there. Since 4 times 25 is 100, we can get, if we simplify this out, we get I to 100, but we're trying to find for I to the power of 100. So I fourth is the same as I squared times I squared, and then to the power of 25, and then I squared is -1, so -1 times -1, and then to the power of 25, -1 times -1 is 1, so equals 1 to the power of 25. And then if you multiply 1 25 times, if you think about it, it equals 1, since 1 times 1 is just 1. So now let's move on to D. I to the -2312. So this may look hard, but you have to go through the basics. So if you have a square root of the exponent of a negative number, you do the reciprocal. So 1 over I to the power of 2312 is the reciprocal of this. And remember to take out the negative when you do the reciprocal. So we can simplify this out into 1 over, write I4 in parentheses, so 1 over I4, and then make that to the power of 578. Since 4 times 578 is 2312. So now we can break this apart. So 1 over I4, we can simplify that out into I squared times I squared, and then that's still to the power of 578. And then now that equals, so I squared, you can plug in a -1 for that, since I squared equals -1. So -1 times -1, and that's to the power of 578. So 578. And then that equals -1 times -1 is 1. So 1 over 1 to the power of 578. And if you multiply 1 578 times, you still get 1. So we get 1 over 1, which equals 1. It's a lot of 1s in this. So let's move on to our last problem. That is evaluate I to the power of 6 plus I to the power of 16 plus I to the power of negative 26. So I to the power of 6, we can break that out into I to the power of 4 plus I squared. Times I squared. So, and then plus, write this in parentheses, so 1 to the power of 4, and then you can write an exponent of 4 outside of that, since 4 times 4 is 16. So plus 1 over, so let's do a reciprocal of I to the power of negative 26, and that's 1 over positive 26. 1 over I to the power of 26. So we have that. Now you can plug in the numbers. So I fourth, if you split that out, that's I squared times I squared, and then that is negative 1 times negative 1, which is 1. So 1 times negative 1, I squared is negative 1, plus I to the fourth is 1, and then 1 to the fourth. So you use this 4. And then plus 1 to the fourth, plus 1, and then we can break this down into, in parentheses, I squared times, and then you can write outside of it the exponent of 13. So we have this. Now we can start simplifying this out. So 1 times negative 1 is negative 1, and negative 1 plus 1 to the power of 4, and 1 to the power of 4 is just 1. So negative 1 plus 1 plus, and then I squared is 1 over I squared, which is negative 1, so negative 1 to the power of 13. So now we can simplify this out even further. So negative 1 plus 1 is 0. So we can cancel that out. And then 1 over negative 1 to the power of 13. So 1 over negative 1 to the power of 13. And then that is, if you multiply negative 1 13 times, you get, so 1 over negative 1. If you multiply negative 1 times itself 13 times, you get negative 1. So we have 1 over negative 1 equals negative 1. 1 over negative 1 equals negative 1. And we have this for our answer. Thank you for watching Kid2Kid Tutorials. And if you like our videos, please share, like, and subscribe. Thank you.